Global internet capacity trends. So we've been gathering data on the capacity of internet backbones around the world for about 15 years now. So I'm going to provide some data, looking at data for the past 10 years, really, and seeing what has changed around the world in terms of how the internet has been growing. So the issues we're going to look at today, I'm going to look at, is the US and Canada still the leading inter-regional internet hub? Second, I'm going to look at if there's any new internet hubs that have been emerging around the world. And finally, I'm going to try to look at the impact that content provider networks could be having on the pace of internet capacity growth. So we have to have a map to start every telegeography presentation, right? So here's a map. It's old, 2004. This is the global internet. This is the lines show the bandwidth between the various major world regions scaled by capacity. And just so you know, the line that goes above the top of the world, there are no cables there. We know that. We're not idiots. It's just designed to show the various capacity between the regions. So yes, there are cables across the Pacific Ocean, as you guys know. So in this map, you can see that clearly the highest capacity link was between US and Canada and Europe, followed by US and Canada and Asia. The other routes, very small, very thin lines there. Let's go to the current view. It's just this past year, data 2014. Things have grown. Also, it's worth noting we had to change the scale actually as well. So the scale is different. You can see here the biggest line was 400 gigs in the upper right for the legend, and here it's 5 terabits. So we had to change things, and even with changing it, there's a lot of thick yellow lines there. So all the regions have grown. Even some of the smaller interregional routes have been growing as well. You just can't see it as much given the change in the scale we have here. Let's dive a little deeper and look at some of these actual figures and see what's been changing. So is the US and Canada on top? It's still on top. In 2004, it was nearly 800 gigs of the total capacity of other regions that connected to the US and Canada, right? Followed by Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, very small. So how have things changed? Kind of surprising, right? You saw the map with all the lines getting very big. Well, the fact is the US and Canada still has a large amount of interregional bandwidth connected to it, followed by Europe, Asia, Latin America, Africa again. But you can see that Asia, Latin America have been growing fairly rapidly and have nearly reached the same level as Europe here. So why is US and Canada still on top? It's really due to Latin America. So this chart here that I've created shows the share of international internet bandwidth connected to the US and Canada. So as a share of the region's total international connectivity. So for many regions, Asia, Europe, Africa, it's been going down since 2004. In contrast, Latin America, a very high growth area, has actually increased the past few years and has remained over 80%. So given the strong growth in Latin America, and it's all largely focused to the US and Canada, that has helped the US and Canada to remain the top hub. So the second issue I want to touch on was what are the other hubs we're seeing emerging. So I did a similar chart looking at Europe. And Europe's role as a hub has definitely been growing in the past few years for many reasons. So this figure is showing the share of international capacity connected to Europe. So the lines here are some subregions within Asia and Africa. So North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. And they've all been on the rise. So what is it about Europe that's drawing more capacity to Europe? Well, it's closer from many of these regions, so there's lower latency to go there. The price of IP transit in Europe is the same or cheaper than it is in the US and Canada. And finally, Europe has a very rich peering scene. So many operators want to connect to DKIX, AM6 links, and the other changes that are there to be able to peer off some of their traffic and to help to keep their costs lower. One other trend that you could probably see from the maps I showed at the beginning are the capacity of these major interregional routes is nearing parity, actually. And it's been pretty striking when you look at the past 10 years of just how far things have narrowed between these major routes. So looking at 2004, Europe to the US and Canada, far and away the highest capacity route, followed by the Trans-Pacific, Asia, US and Canada, then Latin America to the US, Asia, Europe. I just showed the 4 highest capacity ones here. Contrast that to what we saw this past year. Wow, right? So the transatlantic isn't the biggest for international internet backbones. Neither is the Pacific. It's US to Latin America, which goes back again because Latin America's connectivity is focused really on the US and Canada, whereas other regions have heavy intra-regional traffic, but also they link to other regions as well. So their connectivity is a bit more diversified. The last thing I wanted to cover here is how international bandwidth is being used. And so internet has been the largest component of bandwidth usage for quite some time. The area chart here in blue shows internet, the red is showing private networks, and the little bit of yellow is voice, switched voice. So the red part is pretty interesting because what is private? The way we define that is it's non-internet corporate WAN traffic, it's research networks, and the biggest component right now actually is content provider networks. So all the names you guys know, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, all the internet players. So what's going on here? There's the red is starting to go down and account for a larger share of capacity usage. So when looking at the source of demand shifting, what this is showing here is just the growth rate in the Atlantic and the Pacific, where a lot of the content provider activity has been focused in recent years. So the lines are showing the annual growth rate of new capacity being added, and you can see the diverging trend here. The blue in the bottom is internet backbones. It was once above 40% in 2009, 2010. And now it's been just over 20% for the past couple of years. Contrast, private networks has been increasing and has been well over 50% the past several years. So this is leading to some changes in who is consuming the most bandwidth and who is really accounting for a lot of the growth going forward. So I think that's something that we've seen at the conference here is the increasing role companies that are involved in the content delivery and the content creation and the cloud businesses are having in terms of who is using who is buying capacity and putting it into their network. So just to conclude quickly before the time runs out here, US and Canada still the top hub for inter-regional bandwidth, as it has been for the past 10 years. But we're seeing parity among the major routes that link the regions together. And finally, the growth driver is shifting a bit from the internet backbone operators towards the private networks and the content providers. Thank you very much.